Hi, my name's Jason Barcham. I'm an Associate Partner with Servian, New Zealand. Welcome to the Technology Whisperers, a technology and innovation podcast brought to you by Servian with your hosts Alistair Ross and Sean Muller. Join us as we demystify the latest emerging innovative technologies for businesses of all shapes and sizes, sharing our thoughts on how you can improve your current technologies, practices and processes to transform your business.
You are listening to Technology Whisperers with me, Alistair Ross, and your host, Sean Muller. It's episode 8 of the Technology Whisperers. I can't believe how quickly we have been running through these episodes. And yeah, I'm just ecstatic about that, Sean. My terrific Texan pal.
Well, yeah, it's been a whirlwind, Alistair. The finding time to do the recordings and all the great guests that we've had on, it's just been and the episodes and the feedback that we've gotten about the episodes have just been absolutely spectacular.
It has been. And so today it is my absolute pleasure to say that we have yet another guest. So obviously I think people are sort of getting the idea now that they don't need to be too shy and can come forward and talk. And obviously we've managed to talk just enough rubbish that's like just below that level or that threshold that people can go, okay, they're talking some level of sense here, so I can put my name to this too. So today it's another guest opportunity, and with me today is none other than Cam Chapman of Fernleaf Consulting. Now, Cam has been around in the industry here in New Zealand and around the world, I think, as well. But here in New Zealand, and started his career in the sort of mid-1980s. That puts it well and truly in the pre-internet ages. 15 years in software development, systems design and architecture, and has gone on to do lots and lots and lots of things in his career. Outside of that, he was a certified enterprise architect with Carnegie Mellon University. He moved into general business and technology consulting 15 years ago.
Hold on a second, Alistair.
What?
Can you say that Carnegie Mellon again? I just want to hear you say that again.
Carnegie Mellon. What's the problem with that?
No problem. I just
Mellon.
wanted to hear you. I loved the way you said it so much. I wanted to hear you say it again. So I'm good.
No, right, let me hear you say Carnegie Mellon again.
It's Carnegie Mellon. Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie. Well, I just remember the book Dale Carnegie wrote. I would say Dale Carnegie. But he was American, so you can't see this, listeners, but Sean is absolutely guffawing right now. He's bobbing up and down with laughter.
I mispronounce names in New Zealand so often, and locations in New Zealand so often.
Yes.
And Alistair does such a better job than I do at pronouncing Maori and New Zealand names that once in a while a U.S. name comes up, and he says it in such a unique way. It's so entertaining. I enjoy it so much.
All right there then. Okay, Carnegie Mellon or whatever. We'll move on from that one. Back to Cam, general business and technology consultant 15 years ago, and subsequently worked as an advisory consultant with a number of mid to large organizations. He came back as a consultant after a stint in software sales. I'm sure we'll talk about that one, Cam. And that was for a very large multinational, and has also been working in leading executive roles for the last 10 years, and is now the managing director of a Wellington-based consultancy called Fernleaf, as I said, specializing in working with small and mid-sized organizations to optimize their use of digital technology. Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to introduce you to today's guest, Cam Chapman. Hi, Cam.
Hey, thanks, Alistair, and hi, Sean. How you doing? I've absolutely never had an introduction like that before in my life, so I'm incredibly overwhelmed with the rigor that you put in there. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, and thanks again for the opportunity today to have a chat to you guys about business technology.
Absolutely.
So Cam, I think that's actually a brilliant place to start. Alistair and I talk a lot about this, about the fact that the purpose of technology is to provide business outcomes, and that part of the Technology Whisperers is this idea that there are a lot of technologists that just sometimes they don't understand when they're talking to the business that they're not saying the right things. Now, you and I have enterprise architecture background, so we understand that kind of translation back and forth. But when you say business technology, help us understand exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. I guess to sort of, pedal back a little bit. I mean, as an IT professional through many, many years, I guess I spent a lot of time talking to people about their challenges and their problems. So whether it was challenges with technology or challenges that could be solved with technology. And you sort of become almost a therapist at times, listening to people complaining about how their technology is not working. And for many, many years, we put names on it. We would call our roles enterprise architect or consultant or what have you. And I really got excited when I started to do a bit of research around this concept of business technology. It really gave me a name for what I actually did and have been doing for the last 15 years. And that, of course, drove the birth of Fernleaf Consulting. But when we talk about business technology, I think the first thing that we need to think about is really sort of thinking about the definition around digital. We talk about digital technology, and it's one of those terminologies that's sort of thrown around. People use it willy-nilly. For the purposes of what we're going to talk about today, digital is really about including all of the systems and tools that use or transmit data and so forth. So that can be software, it can be hardware, it can be a phone, computer networks. We're hearing a lot about artificial intelligence, in the news of late, things like drones, gadgets, and so forth. So digital really encompasses all of that. So with that in mind, when we can't start to think about business technology as IT professionals, we've been actually doing business technology for a number of years. We historically look into the past to get guidance about how we should approach complex problems. And we've looked at, as IT professionals would know, we've looked into the past where we've looked at the Industrial Revolution. We've looked at how factories have switched into mass production and looked at how they've developed processes. And we've brought those processes into our practices and the way that we operate. We've looked at other industries as well. So automotive, Toyota's a classic example of how Kanban sort of started to be used in the IT. And they've sort of driven or been aimed driving, exceptional outcomes. And so as IT practitioners, we like to think ourselves as revolutionary, but we do take a lot of what we do from other practices and other parts of the world. And I guess with that, there's been lots of failures. And those failures, I think, from an optimistic perspective, give us a lot of learnings. And so we've been taking those and actually looking for many years how we bridge that gap between business and IT, that traditional saying of, how do we bridge that gap? Well, business technology really is a way of defining how that gap exists. So business technology is sort of driven from a business technologist perspective. It's really about the existence of technology or data related capabilities that actually run outside of IT. And that's often things like non-technically trained people doing technical things. Yeah. So we all know of examples, whether we're a small business or a large organization, where these kinds of things are happening all over the place.
We used to call them shadow IT, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. So we will talk about shadow IT in a little bit. There is a difference. There is a clear difference between.
Completely agree. Completely agree. But there was, there was this idea. So there's this idea that once the IT department became so rigid in what they could do, that the business departments would get tired of it and would just go and do the technology around them.
That's right.
And I think that might have been within the technology department we called it shadow IT, and it was a terrible thing because it impacted our budgets negatively and everybody fought against it. But I do think if there wasn't a value there, if there wasn't something that was broken in the relationship, then it wouldn't have happened, right? And
agreed. Yeah, absolutely. It's we'll come to the sort of the definition of shadow IT as we work through this conversation. And I absolutely agree. I've got an example that I'll talk about as well, where I was actually involved in trying to rein in a little bit of shadow IT, and it was driven mainly by need, but also by some really significant creativity. And so you kind of take your hat off and go, yeah, that's great. 10 points for initiative, but 2 points for execution. But what we're doing when we talk about business technology is actually looking at really sort of dissolving that gap between business. So we used to talk about the bridge between business and IT. Business technology just dissolves that. So it fills the gap and evens the playing field for technical and non-technical people to actually engage. So as we talk about that, we sort of think about methodologies. We think about, how we've done this in the past. And there's there's been things like, governance frameworks or methodologies like Agile, where as technologists, we've tried to bring something to the market or bring something to, into our capabilities that allows us to engage with the business far more efficiently. So business technology is not about just Agile. It's not about just governance. It's an encompassing concept that actually brings governance, it brings roles, it brings methodologies, disciplines, and all the technology platforms together. So when we think about business technology, it really is about bridging that, or I guess walking the bridge that has been closed between business and IT, and actually coalescing both parties together so that they can actually work cohesively together.
Yeah, I think you and I, Cam, we've talked in the past about how there was a very clear delineation in the past about IT. They were very much technologists, people who were passionate about technology, loved getting their hands dirty with gadgets, whatever, that was their background. They grew up in this particular way and they went to work. And the businesses of the times, and this is going back as far as like the 1970s and 80s, we're basically saying, right, okay, we can see the seedlings of the benefits that information technology or computers back in those days could bring in an organization. So they thought, okay, well, it'll be a good thing to buy these computers. And then, okay, we're going to need to have some company to or individuals in our team to look after these computers and this data. And that started the beginning. But these people that were brought in were, a lot of them were like, boffins, wore the little twirling bit on top of their cap and, little pocket protectors and stuff like that. They were geeks, and a lot of them still are, but they were very much a lot of, and they weren't doing it out of malice or anything like that. There was no malice intended, I'm pretty sure. But effectively, these IT departments then grew up. They started to have this, this whole time of where they would try and do things for the greater good, and we'll put this system in, and it's a really good system, and it's good technology. But it's kind of like the VHS and Betamax, back in the day, the VHS won out because it wasn't a better technology, it wasn't a better standard. It was highly available and it was cheaper. So it recognized the business need. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it's an analogy that a lot of people from our sort of generation will know, right? So the Betamax didn't win out because of its technological supremacy. And
I think you need to update it to the Blu-ray versus HD DVD. Alistair.
Something like that, yeah. Sorry, I don't know enough about it. I'm too old school.
But you're right. You're right. A lot of the IT departments, they got to the point in the 90s, we see it, and then in 2000s we see it very heavily, that they would do technology merely for the sake of the technology. And I remember sitting in rooms with up to the CTO and CIO with people throwing little tantrums saying, well, the business won't let me upgrade all of these servers to the latest version of Windows Server. Don't they know that there's all kinds of these issues associated with it? And I remember thinking to myself, well, has anybody explained that to the business in a way that they can understand? And has the business told us what the cost associated with doing this was? And that never got across any of it.
That's right.
It's
almost we if you go back and we think about it, really it was almost a solution looking for a problem.
That's right.
The technology was available. We need to go out there and actually find a way that we can showcase it and show how wonderful it absolutely is. One of my most favorite movies is a movie called Hidden Figures. It's about the NASA computation people that actually use pen and paper to compute all of the algorithms that were required to put man up into space or put people up into space and on the moon. And it was there's a section in there where they brought in the three-letter organization massive mainframe that was going to make all of these humans redundant. And what it did is it actually changed the role of those people to become programmers. So the machine could actually computate faster. It didn't do it differently. It just did it quicker. Yeah. And so all of the people that were there employed to actually use pen and paper actually then became programmers and learned how to use the machine.
Yeah.
So because again, there was a solution looking for a problem. The problem actually presented itself to the solution.
Interestingly, those people were called computers before that three-letter acronym computer came along. So it was interesting that the term computer changed almost overnight with the digital computer coming into effect. Yeah.
And so Alistair, you and I have actually had this conversation and several times, and I think it's right. I think in the early days, Cam, to your point, the business didn't understand what they could do with the technology. So it was a lot. We were bringing the technology to them and going, look, you can do this spreadsheet instead of having to handwrite you remember those old carbon copy paper spreadsheets that the old accountants used to use? So here's this Excel spreadsheet, and you don't need to do that anymore. But I think we have progressed to the point now where there are very few successful business people that don't understand the value of technology. And the technologists haven't necessarily progressed to the point where they're not still trying to sell a technology for technology's sake, instead trying to sell a technology for a business outcome's sake.
Exactly, yeah, and that's a beautiful segue into how we define a business technologist, right? So the research that I've been going through defines business technologists really in two genres, if you like, or two types. So we think about business technologists, dedicated business technologists. These are the people that are working in part of the business, and their sole role is as a technical. So that might be someone like a data analyst, for example, that's working in a marketing department, or it might be a data scientist working in a certain area of the business. So their primary role is to actually work with technology, but they're actually working in a business unit, right? And that was something that we saw probably in the last 10 years, where analyst type roles were starting to move into the business, and the business units were starting to recruit analysts that had a technical background. I'm sure we can all remember the role of a technical BA, right?
Yes.
So that's sort of the dedicated business technologist. And then we have the second type, which is the citizen business technologist. Now, these are the people that dabble, right? And these are the people that create digital assets, but it's not their full-time job, right? So it could be someone like a CFO, for example, who's creating spreadsheets to report back to the board, or
writing macros in those spreadsheets.
Correct. Yeah,
to do things.
And logging on to a website to do some self-education around how to write a macro in Excel, right?
Yeah.
Without any knowledge of the implications of that, from a security perspective, or right. But the citizen business technologist, this is where small and mid-sized business owners typically fit in as well. So if we think about a small or medium-sized business owner, unless they're running a technical organization or a digitally based organization, their primary skill is not digital technology. Right. So they are learning on the go. And, I use the analogy, technology is just, if you have a credit card and a first name, the implementation of technology is really simple. Yeah. This is where the citizen business technologists come in. And they're the ones that, as I said, dabble in the technology. And so we look at those in terms of, where they fit in the business, and they are equally effective in organizations. Obviously, the dedicated business technologist, there is some requirement for sort of, there's less requirement for governance. They appreciate the risks that are associated with implementing digital technology, security, privacy, with data and all that kind of stuff. The citizen business technologists, these are the people that probably need a little bit more guidance around what they're actually doing and what they're actually implementing. So if we think about business technologists, obviously we think instantly about analysts, and we used that analogy before, but they could be any role. They could be change managers, they could be project managers that are using technology in a particular way. Obviously developers and architects, security people, but even as far as people that do workshop facilitation, these people are contributing to bridging the gap between business and technology. And while they might not necessarily be heavy digital technology users, they are still facilitators of that, of the bridge between those two areas. Mm-hmm. So the role of business technologist is not a single role. It's not something that we can sort of pin on an analyst or a developer or whatever. It really encompasses a number of different roles that work within an organization.
But is the key that they're working in the business units? Is that the fundamental key?
Well, it is. It's really the key is that they're actually working with business people. Now, they might not necessarily be working in the business unit, right? They might still be based in IT, and we'll talk about that in terms of how organizations may want to structure their analysts. But it's about their goal, and their objective is to actually resolve issues or challenges with digital technology if it's appropriate, and facilitating that change and making it as simple as possible for non-technical people to be able to do that.
Are we seeing So, I mean, you're talking small and medium business makes a lot of sense, especially for the citizen business technologists. But are we seeing, even within the large enterprises, the scaling out of this as low code, no code, and even AI assisted development activities and platforms start coming along? I mean, we saw a rise in business, and I'll use the term again. I'm not using it negatively. A lot of people think that, but we saw a rise in shadow IT when cloud came on, right? Because you're right. A business department that was having trouble with their local IT could just choose to pick up the phone or go on the website and put a credit card in, and they'd have a cloud environment that they could work with. So has that been some of the facilitation that has made this
I think so.
Successful?
So we're technologists. We love our stats, right? So I've got some stats that Gartner presented. These are a few years old. They come out of a study that was done a couple of years ago, and they were saying 41% of employees, on average, are actively involved in business technology. So that's almost half, and they're involved in either creating technology or data and analytics capabilities, right? So these are data analysts, or they might be low code, no code developers that are in there assembling small packages or pieces of software. 25% of employees in government, now bearing in mind this is a US-based study, 25% of employees in government, over 50% are in over 50% in IT intensive sectors are involved in IT related implementations. So a quarter of all employees in government and 50% of employees in IT intensive sectors, right? And they also went on to say organizations who effectively support business technologists are 2.6 times more likely to accelerate digital transformation. Okay, now that's an interesting stat, because what that's saying is that by including your business SMEs in the process, you're actually increasing the cadence and the ability to deliver at that speed around these solutions. Now, this last fact is quite interesting. 33% of all business technology workers are ex-IT.
Yeah.
So a third of the people that are actually working in the business are from IT. So they've jumped ship and are doing what Fernleaf Consulting are doing, where we're actually saying, hey, there are people out there that have the knowledge that can actually help business people to facilitate your delivery and do it in a quick way.
Well, and you touched on something, and Alistair, I'm going to drag you in, because this is one of those terms that you and I have some heartburn around, this idea of digital transformation. But you touched on it in a way that actually is closer to what I believe it truly is. And that's not just making stuff available on the internet. A lot of companies think that's digital transformation. It is actually facilitating how they do business using technology and using digital functions. And Alistair, I'd like to get your take on that. Do you feel that that's more what the true meaning of digital transformation is?
I think if an organization goes underway of any sort of digital embarkment without having a fairly comprehensive undertaking of process, of business understanding, of stakeholder engagement, really just getting all of the particular people involved and all of the non-technical aspects and understanding those clearly, then this digital transformation, whatever it may be, is doomed for failure. And I, in practically every project I've ever been on, if I come to it late and I see that the stakeholders haven't been engaged, or the processes haven't been understood, or the documents haven't been written that diagram the processes or flows, they all fail, all of them. I haven't seen one that has just gone, oh yeah, we're going to do this bit of technology because this piece of technology is great, because this marketing is really good marketing material, and it says product X is the one that we're going to drop in. And the sad thing is that we've seen huge organizations, both in corporate and in government, adopt a piece of technology because a conversation's happened on a golf course, or it's happened, a product demo, and it goes, oh look, we can solve all of your problems. But that really misses a huge part. That's a technology showcase. That's not a business problem-solving aspect. You need to bring both worlds clearly together and jump that bridge. So, and like Cam said earlier on about dissolving the bridge. Whether we can actually get to the position of dissolving that bridge entirely is yet to be seen, because there are technologists out there, there are people who earn their craft, their living from being, and I kind of sometimes make it analogous to doctors. There's doctors out there who really like to talk doctor speak and make it very difficult for everybody else out there to understand exactly what it is they're talking about, when actually it's probably not that complicated. Sometimes it is, but like we need to get to a point where we're all talking the same language and making things just much more transactionally available. Hopefully that answers that question.
Look, I think there's a couple of points there. I think the first point really is touching on the fact that I guess IT needs to recognize itself as being an enabler and being a contributor to helping to make digital technology more strategic. Right. So that's strategy is not about IT strategy. It's about business strategy. It's about becoming more successful as a business. And how do we strategically leverage technology to be able to support our strategic goals and objectives? But I think the other thing too that you touched on, when you mentioned the golf course analogy, is that trusted advisory, making sure that you have a good, solid, trusted relationship with your technology providers or your technology advisory. I'll touch on this a little later when we start talking about small business, but when you run a business, you surround yourself with trusted people. You have a person, hopefully, that you can trust that's your accountant. You have some legal representation that you trust. And a lot of organizations tend to sort of forget the technology side of things. And, we all hear the horror stories about when technology goes wrong or it goes bad, or someone has a data incursion and loses a whole pile of data. And then all the hands start waving in the air. But having a good, solid, trusted relationship with a technology advisory, whether that as a large organization is your internal IT department, or as a small business, you have a trusted IT provider that can actually give you advice and actually be very proactive about their relationship with you. So that proactivity combined with the trusted advisory, you're going to become more strategic in the business, and you become part of that strategic equation. So I think, sort of summing up that whole conversation, I think it really is about trust. It's about being part of that strategic conversation. And there are businesses out there that do this, but there are more businesses out there that don't do this, that should be doing this better.
The successful IT organizations I've seen have been those ones where the internal IT organization is seen as that trusted advisor. The ones where, and the vast majority of them are this way, the ones where fail, the IT first of all see themselves as understanding what needs to be done better than the business. That's the first mistake. Yep. The second is that they see themselves as, well, we're just a cost center that we do stuff when the business tells us what they want to do. And you know what? They never know what they want to do. So they never tell us right. And we never can deliver. And that animosity, of course, on the business side, they feel like they never get told what they need to know, and they never get delivered what they ask for. And they don't understand, the complications. I've done a massive amount of AI ML in the last 3 years, and the complete lack of understanding of the complexity of AI ML from the business side, very high-end CIOs at very large companies looking at me going, well, isn't it just software development? No, it's not just software development. There's a wildly more to do AI ML, and just having that conversation and educating the business to better understand that. If there was a business technologist there that was a trusted advisor in there that could provide them that guidance. I mean, Cam, we used to call these people business architects back in the day, right?
Yeah,
back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were business architects. But
Yep.
somewhere along the line, this idea of business architecture, it was like, yeah, we're not going to spend money on business architecture. That doesn't make any sense. But half the job they did was designing how those processes and conversations and making sure that the business outcomes were being driven into the technology solutions. And
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Sean. Yeah, I mean, business architecture was all about showing accountability and showing that connection between the implementation of technology and how that actually supports what the business is doing, its function, its processes, its goals, and its objectives. That I loved my when I was a business architect, I loved going into organizations and talking to them about what they did, and then looking at how they implemented their technology to be able to support what they did. And then use that to be able to show them where they have gaps.
Yep.
So where they had need to be able to, they could leverage either existing technology, extend what they already had, or look to implement new technology. So it was an exciting time. And that it was a precursor to business technology.
Yeah. Well, and gives them a chance to make informed decisions. And I think that's the biggest challenge is from the business side is that oftentimes they have to make decisions and they're not informed. They just don't know. They don't have enough information. And so they're making the best guess they can. So that's actually a pretty good segue. Let's talk about small and medium businesses, because I think there's a unique problem in this area in small and medium businesses because they don't have the traditionally, I mean, a lot of the enterprise sized businesses, their IT departments are larger than some of these medium businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've done a lot of work with small businesses for many, many years. I've had friends that have set up small businesses, and of course, as the IT guy, I'm dragged in to help them out. I had a close friend of mine who owned a business for 20 years, and about a year into owning the business, we sat down and we actually put a plan on a whiteboard, and he showed me that plan that he had printed out 20 years later when he sold the business, and that was the plan that he stuck to, which is kind of cool. You think about businesses, a lot of business changes and so forth, but where we've actually come to now, and we touched on this point earlier on about technology just being so easy to adopt. All you need is a name and a credit card, and they're just setting up a business. I went through this when I set up Fernleaf Consulting, right? It took me, now I'm at an advantage because I kind of knew what I was looking for, but it took me 2 hours to basically sit online with a credit card and set up my business, all the systems that I needed, everything from the company's office through to trademark registration, finance systems, web hosting, domain names, email, all that kind of stuff. Insurance was all done within 2 hours, right? Now, if we take that back sort of 20 years, and I don't want to keep going back to the past, but the fact that we've got the internet, as a simple mechanism now, generations have grown up, that's all they know. That makes things a lot easier. But what it does do is it brings a lot of risk. And if you're not doing your due diligence around the acquisition of these kinds of things, you can get yourself into a whole lot of trouble really, really quickly. So for small business owners, they see, I guess, technology as kind of an annoyance, a side effect of doing their business, and that's all well and good. But if they don't pay enough due diligence to actually getting, good technology implemented, it's like going through what used to be the yellow pages, but is now online, and looking for an accountant, right? And just basically closing your eyes and pointing at the sheet.
You make a good point there, Cam. And one thing I'd just like to interject with as well, like when you went through the yellow pages, and I think on top of that, there would be the standouts, right? There'd be the big adverts in there, but there'd also be, a bunch of sort of word of mouth recommendations. And word of mouth still happens, but you also have a plethora of choices now. If you think about accountancy software, maybe not, but there are some big standout names that people know. But if you look at the other stuff, the more niche software that people, if your business requires, your ERP, your line of business software, whatever it may be, when you start thinking about that, if you're a small to medium business, choosing that particular piece of software, all of your friends are using some different software. There's probably 20, 100, 200 titles that you have to choose from. And so that plethora of choice is a confusion and is extra noise that a new business owner really, really has to contend with. And then they have to make that decision for each piece of software over and over until they've got all the software they need. And then what if they make the wrong choice at the beginning, and then 6 months, 12 months, 24 months down the line, they find out that problem has just begun. That's when having a business technology advisor can really make a night and day difference, because they make the right decision from the beginning.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're absolutely right. The plethora of opportunity and the plethora of options that people have presented to them now is staggering. The other thing, I guess, to add to that too, is the upsell that occurs. So we see this in apps that you download on your phone. There's a certain piece of functionality you can get if you spend another $1.99 with us, or you have some smart systems that identify that you're doing some particular function in your system, and therefore there's a new feature that we have that means you're going to implement, spend another $29 and turn this feature on, and this will make you change your life. It'll be earth shattering. So it's these kinds of decisions that are consistently being presented to small business owners, and I'm sure that there are a lot of small business owners out there that are just losing sleep over their technology environment, and that doesn't need to be the case. Technology is really about enabling the business to be the best they can be, and so part of the role of a business technologist is to really help organizations like that, help business owners like that. And that's not typically isolated just to small business owners. We can think about, managers of small teams within larger organizations, or mid-sized teams within larger organizations that have a bit of an IT budget and have a little bit of a free rein on what they can do, having to make those decisions. And if there is no governance that's coming, no guidance coming from around them, which way do they go? And you can often be at the mercy of advertising. The biggest, brightest, shiniest advert that's coming at me, that looks interesting, I'll just click on the buy now and off I go. So you're absolutely right. It's a time now where we're seeing a lot of systems that are being sold to organizations that solve specific needs. And so we have quite a fragmented environment now, which kind of drives demand around. And when you buy your system X that's going to solve a problem for you, you need to make sure that it plugs into your finance system. And then you need to be a technical expert to work out how the plumbing works, because you want one system to talk to the other one. So not only are you having to work out how to use system A, you're having to work out how to make it talk to system B. And so those kinds of challenges, they shouldn't be problems that small business owners have. And I talk to small business owners. I go, look, be inquisitive, but don't actually become an expert. So when I talk about become familiar with technology, but have a knowledge, rather than employ someone to actually help you with that capability. So yeah, really important for small business owners. Get someone alongside you that can actually help you with the advice that you need, in the same way that you have an accountant or a lawyer help you with accountancy questions or legal questions.
And I don't think you're talking about, because I know some small business people, and they're like, well, I need to order Geek Squad, right? I need to hire Geek Squad to come and take care of my computers. And that's not what you're talking about. What you're talking about is somebody that can provide a business technology advice. So when they have a choice between, oh, should I put myself in Azure or Google Cloud or AWS? I don't even know how to compare these three. I don't even know what's the cost difference between them. The business technologist can come in and help them make a decision that will work best for their business. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and it does, I guess, span, a whole lot of different areas. So we talked about, PC guy or PC people in a car turning up and fixing your PC, and that's all well and good. And that might be okay if you've just got one PC and you're not, you're just using email and things like that. But, as you go through, as your business develops and you actually, your business starts to grow, the technology that's going to support that business starts to get a little bit more complex. Because you have not only internally where you've got multiple people needing to work together, but you might be collaborating with some of your clients as well. And that might require you to do something safely on the internet, for example. Now, setting up that kind of stuff, when you need to get, say, SSL certificates to ensure you've got secure HTTP or whatever, as soon as you have that kind of conversation with a non-technologist, you can see the shutters come down behind the eyes and they go, oh, too hard. So, it's that kind of stuff where you actually, as a business technologist, your responsibility is to sit there and actually explain to the business owner that if you're going to be talking to people over the internet, you've got to do it safely. The number of times I've explained to people what a VPN is, and I use the analogy of a pipe, and instead of routing traffic through the air, you route it through a pipe, right? And they look at that and they go, that just makes sense, right? I live by an ethos, which is kind of interesting, and I challenge technologists that are actually listening to this podcast. I have this thing called the mum test, and when I'm trying to explain a complex problem, I would sit in the back of my mind and I would sit there and go, how would I explain this to my mum? And now, my mum's passed away now, unfortunately, but the concept is, how do I make this simple enough, but also communicate the need and, if it's required, the risk around this. So how do I make this understandable by the person that I'm talking to? And so I guess I'll put a challenge out to all the technologists out there: apply the mum test or the dad test, or choose your favorite non-technical person in your life and actually use that as a way of being able to go, how am I going to communicate this problem to this person so they'll sit up and listen, but I'm not going to actually blindside them with a whole lot of technical mumbo jumbo. As soon as you start to get into those 3-letter acronyms, you're going to lose them.
That's it, right? So that was the point I was going to pick up on as well. Like you mentioned there, like the eyes glazing over. It's not just the fact that the people that you might be talking to don't understand. It's the fact that you're also in a situation where there is waning interest. You know, there are things that these people are incredibly intelligent. A lot of these people that you'll be talking to are incredibly intelligent. It's the fact that it's not their it's not their bread and butter. It's not their business. It's not the thing that they get out of bed for in the morning.
That's right.
They don't want to hear VPN. They want to hear how does my business get fixed? You know, I've got a problem today. You know, things aren't working.
So I know that.
You know,
I know that we were going
to.
Exactly. I know you mentioned earlier we were going to talk about my sales role, so I'll just touch on it very, very briefly. But part of the sales training, and as a salesperson, one of the things as a sales technique that you actually test in your pitch is the so what test.
Yeah.
So when you're actually pitching something, come back and test that with so what from the person that you're pitching that to, your client or your customer. Why should I care as a customer? If I'm talking to a senior manager and I'm talking about VPN, you know, and I know there's a lot of technologists out there, they're incredibly passionate and they'll go 10 to the dozen when they're talking, and suddenly the shutters come down and you can actually watch the conversation just absolutely atrophy and die right in front of you. You can pick the point at which that executive has gone, I lost you.
Checked out.
So it really is about making sure that what you're communicating is actually able to be understood, but keep it succinct and keep it short. You know, remember who you're talking to. Senior executives, you know, they're very, very busy people. You need 2 or 3 sentences. This is broken. This is how we're going to fix it. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. And you'll probably just get a, yep, okay, go and do it. Right. But when you start throwing in things like VPN and SSL and blah, 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 unless they're a technologist, you're going to lose them. So it is really about being appropriate in the way that you actually have those conversations.
And I think one of the other good things about the business technologist, as opposed to, you know, Geek Squad, for one of a better term, we mentioned Geek Squad earlier
and we like Geek Squad. We're not saying bad things about Geek Squad.
But just, you know, just the person that comes along in a car and you know, you have them by the hour and they do this, whatever it is, and fix something, right? Oftentimes they know what they know. They went to university or college or whatever, and they learned a particular technology, and that's fine. But that makes that whole approach a bit of a dictatorship, unintentionally. But if they've learned how to do it the Microsoft way, you're going to get the Microsoft tool, and the Microsoft tool might be the best one, but it also might not be, depending upon the business requirements. Not the technology-based ones, right? But if a person has only learned that one and not understood the business requirements, that is where, you know, having somebody who's more a business technologist aligned really can make a huge difference when you think about the longer term outcomes for a business.
Look, and that's a beautiful segue into starting to talk about shadow IT, and I'll create that link succinctly. But you did touch on the point that when you're actually talking about, you know, business technology, you are, as a business technologist, aware of your clients. Now, you know, our geeks in cars and so have you, they might see 5 or 10 or 15 people a day. They might not necessarily have any context around the problem that they're walking into. So their focus is on that PC that's sitting on a desk. As a business technologist, and we talked about the business architecture background earlier on, and it really is about having the context by which that you're operating in, the business context by which you're operating in. And that draws a long bow into that definition of shadow IT. So we've talked about business technology and the relationship that the business and IT have, or the business and technologists should have. Shadow IT, when we look at shadow IT, there is a very distinct difference. Shadow IT is really where systems are implemented, where they are deliberately bypassing the technologists. Right? Yeah. So with business technology, we're talking about the implementation. We are coexisting with our technology partners. Shadow IT is where this happens without our IT partners. And so they're very, very distinct. Now, the outcomes obviously are very different as well. So with shadow IT, you know, business people would argue that we're going to get what we want. When you talk to a technologist, and I've been in a situation in a large organization with a large system that was implemented in a shadow IT kind of way, IT basically washed their hands of the whole system. They didn't want to know about it, right? Because there was too much risk in actually picking up the support for that system. Now, interestingly, you come back to Gartner, and this is a little bit old, these stats, but Gartner predicted that by 2020, 1/3 of successful attacks on your IT will be as a result of targeting shadow IT implementations. 1/3, 33%. So this highlights the risk that shadow IT brings into an organization, where there may not necessarily be a consideration for the governance that IT companies or businesses actually bring to the implementation of systems. And that governance is around security, it's around privacy of data, it's around security of data, user security, all that kind of stuff. You know, for Gartner to actually predict 33% of attacks are going to hit some shadow IT implementations, that's a red flag around security, right?
Well, and I think some of the driving forces between business technologists and shadow IT, I think the drive is the technology department is not telling us what we need to know. That's why we're going around them, or they're not giving us what we need. With the business technologist, it's, hey, we want to better understand the business and what the business does and how the business does what it does, so that we can facilitate. I mean, I've been in some, similar to you, Cam, large organizations where some shadow IT popped up, and what I heard was the IT department going, yeah, the business doesn't understand why they should put all this security stuff in, and they just want to do what they want to do, and the risk comes down on all of us. And then I go talk to the business, and they're like, no one's ever told us there was security risk associated with this. What are they talking about? And it's that complete lack of communication that drives shadow IT.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're exactly right, Sean. It's that broken down relationship, that broken down trust relationship. There's no communication, and as a result, there's a lot of assumptions that are made. And we come back to, assumptive design. Well, we think the user's going to like this, so we'll just chuck it in. Shadow IT, seriously undermines the value proposition of IT, and it's an absolute challenge for CIOs and IT managers out there. I've actually had a user come to me. I was actually managing a business systems team, effectively a business technology team for a government agency, and I had a user come to me and says, "I can do this at home. Why can't I do it at work?" And you kind of sit there and you go, actually, that's a really good point. And then you sit there and run through your mind, okay, there's a whole lot of security implication. We're working for a large agency, so there's implications around data privacy and rah. And you're actually mentally building a business case to say, why we can't do it. Whereas we should have actually been sitting there and going, why can we not do this?
Yeah.
Right. So I used to refer to IT departments as the department of no. And as we encourage them to actually be a department of either, if you can't be a department of yes, so let's just be a department of maybe, let's look into it, but don't let no be your initial response when someone comes to you with an idea, because that idea is driven by some kind of demand or pain that they're facing. And if you can solve that pain, then, that's got to be a good thing. So shadow IT, I guess, it has a momentum, and I guess a challenge is that it is a challenge to actually get on top of that. And this is not just isolated to large organizations. Small business owners will see this as well. That same question, I can do this at home. Why can't I do it with you?
Yeah.
But you're a small business owner. You don't have an IT manager that can sit there and bang the desk and go, actually, I don't want my data going onto your phone, right?
If anything, I would say that in this day and age with small businesses, it's more so, because in the larger businesses, they've got large IT teams, and they do things like, having group policy that locks down the desktop so you can't install software and stuff like that. With the small to medium sized businesses, you don't necessarily have that level of lockdown. And so therefore, people who just want to get on with their job, they don't necessarily have somebody in IT to go to, or if they do have somebody to go to in IT, they aren't necessarily the person that would be the most open to having that conversation. And therefore they go, screw this, I'm going to do it myself, shadow IT. And then you get to the situation where you're looking through your organization and trying to track down the amount of shadow IT. That's a huge challenge in itself. Like, okay, you've got an idea that you're out of 100% of the IT in the organization, how much of that is actually shadow IT? And is it 33%? Is it more?
Yeah.
That's a scary thing. Very difficult.
So 20 years ago, you could walk around the floor, right, and go, he's got a second desktop underneath his desk. Yeah. But now with cloud and SaaS, you could have shadow IT all over the world.
Yeah.
So some of those business people could be making decisions like, well, I went to buy my Azure subscription because I got tired of waiting for IT. And you know what? Running it in China is cheaper than running it here in New Zealand. But and I'm going to put all this data that, you know, my business doesn't know about it into a server that's hosted in China.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Like I had an exact example where there was an issue that was happening in the field. I was working as this business systems manager, and one of our very innovative staff members, her partner was a developer, and so over the weekend they developed a mobile app to solve a problem, published it up onto the App Store, and on Monday sent an email around to the team saying, "Download this app; it'll solve all your problems." What they hadn't factored in is that they hard coded in everyone's phone number into this app and all of their contact details. And so what basically happened was that they had breached a whole lot of privacy by doing this. Now, unfortunately, we caught it early on Monday morning, and I heard about it just through the rumor mill. And we basically had a conversation that went along the lines of, well, you realize you've breached these not just IT protocols, but you've actually breached the Privacy Act in general. But also we need to have a chat about how we're going to maintain this application. So is your partner willing to sign up to actually maintain this app and provide us with regular updates and so forth once we fix the issues that we've got? And that app was taken down on Monday night, and a mea culpa email was sent out saying, hey, you know, we had a problem. We tried to solve it. It didn't quite work, but we haven't forgotten about the problem. And that was the key thing, right? It was a call for a solution. It was just that someone took the initiative to actually try and build the solution themselves without consulting with, you know, a business technologist. We actually came back, we managed to solve the problem, but it wasn't building an app and sticking it out on the App Store. It was solving it in a different way. So you're absolutely right. It's keeping those channels open, but it's building that trusted relationship. It's building that relationship with your community that is inclusive and actually encourages them to come and talk to you. You know, so that open door policy, if you've got a challenge you think we can help you with, you know, come and have a chat to us. But it goes one step further. And I think this is one of the key things about business technology is that business technologists have to be proactive. Yeah. And this is where you actually sit and you make an effort to understand the business people that you're working with and the business model that they're working in, their operating model, and you think about opportunities and you start to present those opportunities, right? So what you're doing is you're actually heading a lot of problems off at the pass by actually starting to bring suggestions to these people. So there is a culture where, you know, we talk about being on the back foot and being on the front foot. This is very much about playing front foot shots. Say that 3 times fast with a mouthful of jelly beans. It's about playing the front-footed shot and being proactive about the relationship that you actually develop and maintain with your customers. So that includes technologists in large organizations. It includes IT service providers as well. So, you know, I've worked with IT service providers where they will just take service tickets and will just action service tickets, but don't actually sit there and go, we see a trend happening here. Maybe there's an issue that we need to actually address, and actually come back and go, hey, let's have a conversation and let's look at addressing that. So if anything, I can encourage technologists that are listening to this to start to become proactive. Don't be painful. So don't live in the face of your business folk, but look at trends, look at where there is opportunity to actually solve challenges and problems, and actually start to propose solutions. Because no manager likes to hear someone come to them and go, your business sucks. But if someone comes to you and says, your business sucks and this is how I think we can fix it, you're likely to get an audience. So think about those solutions and think about how you could pitch those solutions using the mum test. You know, how would I actually pitch this to my mum and see how that goes. So that's really sort of, you know, the crux of that business technologist role. I think what this is also going to do is, from a business technology perspective, it's really going to encourage larger organizations to really think about what their internal operating model looks like. There are some large organizations out there that I won't name that I know very well internally that are probably going to not take this change so easily. So what I encourage, you know, IT managers and CIOs to do is actually look at business technology as an opportunity rather than a threat. Look at it as an opportunity to give your team a new way of working. And business technology is not just about implementing agile and calling it done, right? It's about changing the culture of the organization and changing the culture of your technologists. It's about how do we change the way we think about solving problems. There isn't a methodology for business technology yet. I'm working on it. When I do, I'll hopefully become a millionaire. But
tell them we're $1 million shy of being millionaires.
Yeah, exactly. But it really is about changing that culture and changing that energy about wanting to engage and being a lot more proactive. So, CIOs that are listening to this, CISOs that are listening to this, so security officers that are listening to this, your toes are probably curling in your shoes and you're going, oh my goodness, I'm going to let the users free. That's not the case. Where you've got governance that's required, make it as easy as possible to consume. And I've had CISOs come to me and risk managers come to me and go, how do we engage early? How do we actually engage with you early in your project so we can actually educate the team on what's needed and what's required? That was brilliant. That was absolutely brilliant. That was a really successful project because we had the risk people coming and the security people coming really early, and they were on the journey with us. And so It wasn't a matter of us, bringing a solution to the security people and they going through the certification with their big red pen and going, no, yes, no, failed. They actually got to the end and they were actually presenting our solution to the governance board, which was fantastic.
Talking my language. I mean, I think that was something that Sean and I, we had a podcast on security recently, and I think that was something that I raised then, that really security too often, and I mean, we are picking on security here, but it isn't just security, but security is a great one for an example because it is so abused, and especially in New Zealand at the moment, where it is an afterthought. It is at the end of the process, and that is a terrible oversight. And if you all collectively, all of the different functions, not just security, but let's for simplicity's sake say just security at this point, all of these functions come together and work through the progress from the beginning and understand the goals of the project, the outcomes, who the stakeholders are, what processes, what gates are going to be, what the milestones are, what methodology of project management you're using, all of that sort of stuff right from the beginning, and then have a nice way to integrate process of security, in this case, alongside that fits in with everybody's way of working, then everybody wins. And we don't have that, like you just said, Cam, that red pen coming out right at the end. Mm-hmm. And so if you have that red pen coming out at the end, what happens is project delayed, project budget blown, people are very sad. And then there's this sort of recurring loop of, oh, those security people, they're horrible to work with. They're always saying no. Well, in fact, no, they don't want to say no to you. They want to be saying yes, but they say no because they've not been involved in the process until right at the very end, when, of course, they're going to do their diligence, they're going to do their job and find out, yeah, of course, people are people. We make mistakes all the time, and these mistakes have been baked in really early in the project, and then now they're being discovered right at the very end.
Yeah,
no, not a big shock.
No, it's not. And I think too that extends into that small business space as well. So as a small business owner, when you're implementing or you're looking to purchase a service online, think about things like you said earlier, Sean, about, where your data is being stored. Are they clear about the fact that it's actually being stored securely? Is it in a data center that's in the middle of a war zone? Or is it in, a data center that it shouldn't be, that I don't want my data in? Think about not so much about the functionality early on, think about the security side of it. What if my data, think about the data that you're putting in there. If it's customer data and you're a customer of my organization and suddenly I see my data in a breach, how am I going to feel? So it's your responsibility as a business owner to ensure that the data that you collect for your customers is actually secure. Make sure that happens. And if you need to get a specialist to help you understand that, then do that, but don't guess, that stuff. The functionality, that's on the glossies that they actually pitch to you, but they don't often talk about the security side of things and the obligations that, there was a new version, a new edition of the Privacy Act that came out a couple of years ago. Not a lot of people understand the new obligations and requirements that are imposed on all businesses in New Zealand now. And there's some significant changes. Yeah, absolutely. So, for those that are not sure about that, I'd encourage you to actually go and at least have a look at, some of the highlights of the new Privacy Act, because that's really important, and that applies to businesses across the board.
Actually, the government's actually got a really good, the Privacy Commission, our website has got a really good website, like an online learning thing. And the basic, this is the difference between Privacy Act 2 and 3. The website itself, the training materials, I think it was half an hour. You go through it all, and it's very clear to understand. So I'd highly recommend everybody goes on that. Yeah.
There's some fairly serious things happening in the world at the moment, and a lot of advisory is coming out talking about two-factor authentication. So securing your systems beyond just having a username and a password. There is potential risk around significantly large data breaches as a result of what's happening. And so, thinking about things like this, you could truck along in your small business just being, quietly oblivious to all this is happening. And the biggest risk that you have is that you could sit there and go, I'm too small to be hacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're never too small.
Yeah.
If you've got you might have a client list of say 300 or 400 people. They're not looking at you as an organization. They're looking at the data that you hold.
Yeah. We brought that very topic up in the security podcast a few weeks ago. So if you are interested in more detail on that, do listen back to that podcast.
Yeah, head back to that for sure.
It's a
Yeah, and I guess if we take that moving forward, I think some of the things that I'm forecasting for business technology, as we move forward, and some of the things I'm seeing in the market is I'm seeing a lot of functionality that's being augmented. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of acquisitions that are happening at the moment. So last year, for example, Salesforce bought Tableau. Now, Salesforce is a big customer relationship management system, cloud-based. Tableau is an analytics platform, and now I'm merging their products together. And so you had two very successful products that are now coming together and coalescing as one. So we're starting to see a lot more of that. Microsoft went on a big spending spree last year. Adobe, HP, Visa, Xero has the accounting software. They had some significant acquisitions last year. And so what we're seeing with that market is we're actually seeing acquisitions building larger systems. So what that means for the end consumer is that you can subscribe to, say, Microsoft, for example, and you're going to be able to get access to a number of additional pieces of functionality through that subscription. What that does from an integration perspective is it gives you a lot more security because you have a single sign-on to a provider, and through their channels. So Microsoft right now are putting a whole lot of bulletins out around two-factor authentication. So, having a text sent to you when you log on so that they can prove that it's you that's actually logging on. These are measures that have been put in place to secure you and your data. So look for things like that when you're actually implementing solutions. One of the other pieces of advice I can give for larger organizations is start to loosen some of the restrictive practices that you have around governance. COVID in New Zealand actually demonstrated quite quickly and quite vividly what can be done when you do away with governance. I mean, there was some governance, but some of the people that I've spoken to around the initial COVID response in New Zealand and getting access to data and information across government agencies, there was a lot of things that they actually just said, look, let's just get it done. And we'll deal with the implications of that afterwards.
There was a lot of governance for governance sake, I think. And once they draw down the walls of that governance and just took that away and just said, well, what do we really need in terms of governance? And what do we actually have? And in a lot of cases, there was this big volume of governance that really wasn't necessary. And it's nice to see that people have started to think about making things a bit move easier.
It's kind of interesting because a lot of that governance, because I talked with some of the CISOs around where that governance came from, and a lot of it was the lack of understanding of what the technology really did. So they felt they needed to put governance in to protect themselves and to control things that they didn't understand because the technology people hadn't done a very good job communicating with the security, the governance security, not the IT security people. If you're working in IT security and you don't understand the technologies you're working on, then there's a knowledge gap there that needs to be filled. The IT security people should know enough about the technology to be IT security people. But on the governance side, if you don't understand the technologies, you're going to tend to put governance in place that restricts it.
Yeah, I think really it comes back to the ethos that you live by, and it really grinds my gears when I hear people talking about best of breed. Really, what business technology is about is fit for purpose, right? So that can change over time. So when you implement a best of breed solution, you're actually implementing it once. With fit for purpose, you're actually reassessing the need on a regular basis, and then that can adjust. So as part of being a business technologist, it's about introducing that flexibility to be able to change, right? Mm-hmm. So we all know, we've all got stories about that project that was designed 4 years ago and it was implemented 4 years later and the business has gone off and done something else. Keep in pace with the business. Keep in pace with the change that your business is actually going through. Businesses will change. COVID was a classic example of where businesses were pivoting 90 degrees just to stay open, right? Yeah. So as a technologist, how do you actually pivot, just as quickly, just to keep pace with that and provide that advice? So, and that also applies to small businesses as well. It's well within your rights to change your mind every 6 weeks on what you're going to do, but make sure that you've actually got the support to be able to do that. So make sure that your solutions are fit for purpose, and make sure that they're keeping track, and really, encourage the technologists out there to actually explore the complexity of the solutions that you've got. Do they need to be that complex? Do you need that level of governance around what you're actually doing? Which I guess brings me to my call of action to various people. And I guess as a business owner, what I'm saying to you is engage with specialists that can help you on your digital journey, right? You can do it yourself, but there will be a knowledge ceiling that you will hit very quickly. And at that point, you can't make things up as you go along, because that will just introduce so much risk to you. So become familiar with technology, have a knowledge, but not necessarily focus on developing a skill. So understand what you're asking for, understand what you've got, and don't be afraid to ask questions, right? So never lose that inquisitiveness about what's actually going on. If you've got the right technologist working with you, they will explain that journey with you and give you that understanding. You don't have to be an expert in that field. Just an understanding, is enough. So I really encourage you as a business owner, really, really get involved, but don't take it on your shoulders, right? Give that task to someone else to do. As a technologist, what I'm actually saying to you as a challenge is look at how consultative you are. What your approach is. We've all heard the 2 ears and 1 mouth analogy, right? Use them proportionately. If there's training that you need around consultative skills, there's training available out there that you can take. Be business curious, right? So ask for opportunities to engage with your business people if you're in a large organization, right? If you're a service provider, listen and actually ask, be interested. People love to talk about what they do. Just ask them. You'll learn a lot about what they do if you just ask them about the organization. Play the naivety card. If you're in the first 3 months of a relationship, you've got that opportunity to go, I don't understand. Explain to me, help me understand a little more. So be business curious. And as a technologist, again, build on those softer skills and consider getting a business mentor. In New Zealand, we have ITP and they offer great mentoring services, or it might be someone senior in the organization. You could shoulder tap them and go, hey, I love the way that you work. Could you, would you consider, being a mentor for me? Mentors are a great way to actually get a little bit of a different insight into how you can operate. So think about that. As an IT manager or a CIO, you're probably experiencing the pain around shadow IT. There's no doubt it's in large organizations and it's prolific. It's what you don't know that's killing you. But if you're not already, consider experimenting with the concepts of business technology. Get a bit more open. Look for projects where you can actually engage at a common level. Where I've seen success is where business people have actually been brought into an IT group and are actually working alongside the IT people. However you do it, that's I guess horses for courses. It really is how the organization will tolerate that kind of co-working environment. Look at neutralizing shadow IT by taking a consultative approach. Ask people what they're doing. Ask people what their challenges are, right? As a CIO, of a large organization, you probably got hundreds of people working for you. So that might be a little bit of an injection into the team to go, hey, let's go and find out what people are actually doing. Be inquisitive. Build that culture and environment for success and curiosity. Right. So, Alistair, we talked before about some of these IT departments that are very governance focused. It's only going to be this way or the highway, start to soften that approach. As a CIO, remember that your customer always has an option. They don't have to use you. So, it might be that you're embedded in the organization, but there are a lot of providers out there that are vying for your customer's business. And just remember that, you are potentially in a competitive environment. So start to think about how you can actually create an environment, loosen that governance, and look to identify, train, and encourage digitally skilled workers to collaborate in an inclusive way. So these are business technologists that are out in the business. Look to identify these people and look to actually help you build this new culture around business technology. So it's a big task, and I know CIOs and IT managers have a lot more to worry about right now, but it is really about thinking about that culture and how you can actually change that culture to work with the business. And then last on my list is the service providers. These are the people that are providing services, IT services to organizations. Listen to your customers. It's a piece of advice I can give. Learn about their business and be prepared to adapt and be proactive. I've worked with a lot of third-party providers recently that are just not being proactive. They'll take a ticket and they'll resolve that ticket, and then there's no questions about, what can we do, what additional work can we do to help. So be proactive in how you actually deliver your services.
Yeah, I was going to say, Cam, Alistair, we've opened up so many doors that we could go down. I think we could spend 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah. I think that's it. We've opened Pandora's box, and I think it just goes. This is a perfect insight to the wonderful world of Cam Chapman's head. There is so much fantastic advice in there, and so I mean, when you told me that you'd started Fernleaf Consulting, Cam, knowing that the things I knew about you at the time, it sort of seemed to be a perfect marriage of events. So obviously, the listeners to the podcast today have had a chance to get a little glimmer of that insight that you can bring to an organization. So could you tell the listener just a little bit about, give a little bit of a plug for Fernleaf and tell them what it's all about?
Yeah, so Fernleaf was established back in late 2021. The stimulus, or I guess the stimulus for Fernleaf was really COVID. I was seeing a lot of small and mid-sized businesses just struggling to pay their staff, struggling to keep their doors open, and we've all seen the news articles about how difficult it was for business to keep the lights on. And I thought to myself, there's got to be areas in these businesses where there's a lot of additional spend in technology that might not necessarily be needed. And, if we could free that up and help businesses to actually inject that money back into their workforce and keep the lights on or keep their staff employed. And I guess it's sort of growing from there. And with my consulting background, I really did want to start to bring this idea of a new way of organizations to work and to also help those smaller businesses to get off the ground. I'm a small business. I got off the ground. I've got lots of friends who have small businesses that have really struggled with technology, and there really isn't anyone out there that can actually just come alongside you for maybe an hour a month or half an hour a month and just go, actually, you kind of need to do this or you kind of need to do that. So really Fernleaf was about just providing that advisory for those small to mid-sized businesses. And then for the slightly larger organizations, to help with, if there is that need for change, to help with facilitate that sort of cultural change. So it's not just about technology. It's about how you change that culture. It's how you help your people to learn new skills and how you actually foster a positive culture that's going to want to make people come to work, but also come and work. So yeah, Fernleaf was really about bringing the culmination of 30 plus years of my life in IT and really sort of starting to give back some of that in different forms to the IT community here in New Zealand. And, the hope is that, we can continue collectively as a community of IT professionals to support business in a way that helps them leverage digital technology effectively and cost effectively and appropriately, so it's fit for purpose. So in short, that's where Fernleaf Consulting has come from, and that's where we hope to be.
Yes, I mean, what really pleases me to hear as well is that about this community aspect that you've mentioned, the fact that we're doing these things for positive change, and there's a definite amount of sincerity in what you're saying there. And I think obviously, this is not a podcast that's aimed on promoting Servian or anything like that, but I think one of the aspects that I'm proud to be part of Servian is the fact that we are a community-based organization, and we do have this level of pride in the fact that we say what we do, and we do what we say. We're honest about everything. We have a conscience. So that whole bringing it back to a community aspect, that really does resonate with me. So That's fantastic, Cam. I'm super excited for you for the business. And, how can people get in touch with you if they want to know more?
So fernleafconsulting.com is our website. So we have all of our services listed up there. We've got a contact form on the website. If you wanted to contact us, we're available via LinkedIn. Search for Fernleaf Consulting on LinkedIn and you'll see us up there. Or you can pop me an email directly to cam@fernleafconsulting.com.
And I'll put links to those in the notes for the podcast, Cam, so they have them. Do you follow? Can people follow you on LinkedIn or Twitter or any place else?
Yeah, no. So we definitely follow Fernleaf Consulting on LinkedIn. We're in the process where only a young organization. We've got a couple of blogs posted already. We're planning a series of blog posts over the coming months, and they're going to be based and geared more towards small to mid-sized businesses, and they'll be posted both on the Fernleaf Consulting website, but also up on LinkedIn as well. So come and have a look at LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn. We don't have any subscription functionality on the website yet, but that's, as technologists, it's on the list. So we will have that. But the best way would be to follow us on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Oh, very nice. So, Alistair, I've
been Alistair Ross. You can catch me on LinkedIn as well. If you go to LinkedIn, just search for Alistair Ross Servian. I'm sure you'll find me there. You can also get me on YouTube as well. I've got my own little YouTube channel called Al's Geek Lab, and that's my own little fun time stuff. It's very, very geeky. It's in the name. And you can get me on Twitter, AJRossNZ. Sean, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to me at sean.muller@servian.com directly, or you can follow me on the Instagrams, Twitters, LinkedIn's, Facebooks, Sean G. Muller.
You're far more hip and trendy than I am. I refuse to do the ID. I'll just go straight to TikTok.
I haven't done a TikTok account yet, but I have, that little half hour on Sunday afternoon that I make sure that all
imagine, Cam, could you imagine seeing Sean doing his little dances, his little Texan dances, line dancing? Yeah.
No.
With his fedora on as well.
There's no words. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just no.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's been great. Thank you so much, Cam, for coming along and joining us for this Technology Whisperers. I'll sign off with that. And thank you again, everyone, for listening in. We'll see you very soon here on Technology Whisperers. Until then, thanks and bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.